Hi, welcome to or back to my channel. I'm Lucas and today I'm going to be drawing characters for my future comic, Magical Mayhem. The name for it might change, but let's get on to the elevator pitch. Okay, this is my pitch to you. Magical Mayhem has 4 protagonists. They discovered that one of the head sorcerer families owns a cryobank and has been stealing eggs and sperm from said cryobank to create mutants, and for them to be their slaves. One of the main characters, Alon, wants to help save his fellow mutants after escaping. Lucy, Shen, and Morgan agree to help, and they now must unite the other magic systems to help stop them. Now, if you follow me on Instagram or Tumblr, you probably have seen their designs, but if you haven't, let me introduce you to our first protagonist, Lucy. Lucy Moore and his mother are both part Fae, after his grandmother had a one-night stand with one. Now, a note before I get into more of Lucy's design is that this is a world that is obviously an alternate Earth, but I wanted more freedom with the world's geopolitics, so I designed my own map, continents, and countries. I'm still making fixes to the map. Obviously, when you're designing maps, not continents, but countries can look a bit wonky, so you just need a bit of time to fix them and make it look more accurate. And because of that, I'm not going to be showing off the map just yet. Now back to Lucy. Lucy's original design is much different from what it was going to be from now. Around the time I was workshopping this story, I also had another story idea about a teenager wanting to become a folk musician, which was inspired by the song Who Shot the Bird Boy by Rabbitology. I love the eeriness with the song and what it was about, but when designing the first draft of said character, I liked where the design was heading, but I had 2 separate ideas for the character's personality. The first character was supposed to have this very eerie, uncomfortable vibe around them when you meet the character. The second idea was a very loud, eccentric character who was very mischievous. Eventually, those 2 personality ideas for the folk musician story turned into Keith and Lucy. Lucy's old design, which I actually hadn't drawn, I just had a Pinterest board for, was scrapped. And when I was scrolling through Pinterest for inspiration, as I was in a bit of a roadblock with his character design, I liked a lot of artwork with either people or animals having these eerie glowing eyes. There was one specific cowboy art, I think it was of a woman with long hair and glowing eyes standing in the field, and it just fit. I just thought that would be perfect for Lucy's character. And I turned those glowing eyes into glasses. I also liked the idea of not being able to see his eyes either, giving off more weird vibes, and the vibe that he's concealing something, which is the fact that he's part Fae. And another thing is that, I think this is a really common thing that people know, is that eyes are often seen as the windows to the soul, and it reveals parts of what a character is feeling, or more what you don't get to see, and you don't get to see that with Lucy. When I'm designing characters, I actually don't do concept art, but with Lucy's design, I felt like I really needed to do it, as it really just helped me finalize his design. I made these quick sketches to get the simple parts of his design done, including his hairstyle, color palette, and outfits. I was stuck on 2 specific ones and then just mushed them together. And ta-da! You have Lucy! Now, the reason I chose purple and green for the main color palette is that I just love the color green, if you couldn't tell. Anyways, I liked the idea that the color purple represents his Fae side and the green represents his human side. It's also great because I can make his Fae form look like a lunar moth, which is perfect for him. The stars and flowers also help represent that. I thought it would be a neat detail. Lucy's dad, Xavier, works as a history teacher at his school, and they have a great relationship. Both Lucy and his dad are Native American, and in the comic they'll be able to meet his side of the family. This is because Lucy's dad was placed in foster care as a baby. Also, Lucy doesn't have a relationship with his Fae relatives, only because they never knew him or his mom existed. Lucy has a complicated relationship with his mom's side of the family and his older half-siblings. Lucy's mom, Lydia, got married pretty young and was pressured to give up a lot of her hobbies that weren't considered motherly, and really to only be a mother and nothing else. She eventually fell out of love with her first husband and got a divorce, which caused a huge rift in the family. Some of the family was fine, but not fine with Xavier and Lucy. And she did cut off those family members. Lucy doesn't have a connection with either side of his family and really wants to meet his dad's family. But will they accept him and his mom? Lucy's dad, Xavier, did not realize he was Native American. He was taken from his family as a baby and placed with a white family who never treated him the same as his other siblings. The only problem is that after he got placed with his adoptive parents, his document showing who his biological parents were and which tribe he was from was destroyed in the war. He couldn't immediately go search for them as he was kicked out the moment he turned 18 and didn't know if the tribe he was a part of was local or on the other side of the continent or even in a different country. Also, the effects of war and being poor made the whole process a lot slower. You will see more about this story in the comic as well. Lucy is also a bit curious about his Fae side, but is a bit apprehensive about it, as not only are they a whole other species, they have their own customs and morals, which is going to make things much harder, and he doesn't want to end up disappointed. I should mention before we move on to the next character, is that Lucy's family ended up being more of a colorful version of the Addams family, and frankly I think it's perfect for his character. On to our next character, Shen Feng. And the first character that I created, you might have seen their old design along with Morgan and Alon. For their new design, it is still similar with the same pose and everything, but when I was working on Lucy and Keith ended up having a similar color palette to Shen, and I decided to change Shen's color palette, also because they all had greens in their color palette, so I changed things up a bit. I ended up picking a nice blue-green color palette, and to be fair, I'm a sucker for green, so I don't know what you expected. And it keeps his nature-themed colors, so I like that as well. Now, a bit about Shen is that he's a very awkward kid and he struggles to talk about his feelings. Shen is also a first-generation immigrant whose parents left their home country to live a better life here. While at first they had a bit of an awkward relationship growing up, they were able to connect with one another until someone close to Shen outed him as transgender to his parents, which strained the relationship, and now they are back to square one. Shen is obviously very upset at this and struggles to tell his parents why he feels this way and just to express his gender identity in general. One of the reasons why his parents left their home country and cut out their families is that both sides of his families are mages, and women learning magic was a very, very big taboo, which strained the relationship with his mom and her parents as she practices magic. Years later, the family reached out after changing their views and missing their kids. Shen's parents invited them and both of their extended families over to dinner. Shen got to meet with his family, only for him to be outed, which only made things tense between them and their relatives. When I was originally designing Shen, I wanted him to come off as awkward and shy, and kind of like a cat, as that was actually one of my first references for him, was someone drawing a cat as a human. My idea for his current design is basically the same except for the color palette and the outfit. I gave Shen a casual outfit and kept his satchel, and added some cute pins, including one of a fish bone, another of a cat, and the other of a squid. And I added those pins for him because I wanted a mix of earthy and aquatic motifs. Shen's design is supposed to give off vibes of someone who likes being in nature, and so adding those along with the bracelets really helped show it, in my opinion. Actually, all of the main characters have their own nature motifs, as they all care about nature. Also, a fun detail that you might not see until near the end of his speed paint, there is a little cat icon on his shoes with the white patch. They have on those shoes like Converse to mimic an eye. I thought that'd be neat. Now back to me yapping about Shen's color palette, is that I wanted to keep the nature colors, as I mentioned. When I was scrolling through like color palettes on Pinterest, I found the nice blue-green color palette that I used. I thought it'd be perfect to have him a mix of like forest themes and then like a bit of like a sea and lake theme. I'm not only working on these characters, but I'm also working how the magic system works in this world. Mages and wizards mean the same thing. It's either a preference or political reasons. When Shen and the others find out what the sorcerers are doing, he has to present his case to the Mages and Wizards Councils, which both of his extended families are on, which makes things pretty awkward between them. Now let's get onto some happier things. Like Shen's favorite hobbies. Magic is one of Shen's main hobbies, but so is cooking. He often shows his love through cooking meals for his friends and his family. When Shen and the others are hanging out, Shen cooks the meals, Morgan brings their harvest, which are usually fruits and veggies. Lucy usually brings the desserts or the baked goods, and Alon fishes for them. He also likes going on trails, collecting rocks, volunteering at animal shelters, and loves to explore by flying, although he can't use flying magic all the time. Now you may be asking, why can't he? That's because magic at the start of the series isn't known to the wide world. And that's because all the groups of people in their own magic systems have their own reasons on why it should remain hidden. But with what the sorcerers are doing, it makes things much more complicated. I still haven't designed Shen's parents, but I do have their Pinterest boards prepared and ready to go. I can tell you that both of his parents are hard workers and care for him and his siblings. They both have a complicated relationship with their parents and their families in general. Shen's mom's family cut her off when she chose to pursue magic, and Shen's dad's family wasn't happy he was marrying someone they didn't approve of and was a woman practicing magic. Now, before we get into the next character, might I ask you to both like and subscribe to help support this channel? Please and thank you. Now, another character we have here is Morgan, whose design, mainly their color palette and outfit, also changed. Morgan used to have Lucy's color palette, but when I was working on Lucy's story, I ended up choosing that color palette for him. I should mention there was no specific reason I chose this color palette for Morgan, other than I felt that it kind of gave witchy vibes with the outfits I was looking at. When I went to redesign Morgan, I wanted more motifs for their character to round them out and to give them a more unique nature motif along with the others. I decided to go more of a scarecrow route with their design. I kept their long slender body and gave them a crow as a familiar instead. For their color palette, I wasn't sure at first, and then I realized something perfect, a Harvest Moon color palette to go with the scarecrow and gardener theme. The only thing I changed was keeping the purple instead of changing it to blue. I also made the purple a lot more warmer as well. It's also because we already have two different characters with a blue themed color palette, so we can't have that. For Morgan's design, I wanted a nice, cozy, and fancy outfit. I know Morgan is supposed to be a gardener, but they dress fancy! And they have gardening boots. I felt that the dress shirt was missing something and decided to look up some delicious nightshade flowers. I went with the woody nightshade for their button-ups, frankly because I thought it looked cool and that the flower went well with their design. And I just realized this now as I am typing this, but the woody nightshade also has a history with witchcraft and medicinal uses, despite that all of the flower is poisonous. From some of the articles that I read, the traditional uses were used for anti-inflammatory or skin conditions. Back to the outfit, I still felt that it needed more pizzazz. So I thought, why not add an amulet with the colors of the harvest moon? And I added gold surrounding the stone with the phases of the moon around it. So, I feel like that's a very smart design. When I was first designing Morgan, I don't really remember why I chose the hairstyle that they have in both their new and old design. I do remember struggling with what I should do with the hair, and I just somehow got to that hairstyle. I feel like it's an integral part of their design. It gives them a striking silhouette, and frankly, it's iconic. When working on which pose to use, I gave Morgan a silly pose as I feel that fits with their silly personality. I also kept their face and the blush the same because it gives the vibes of a scarecrow. Perfect, nothing to change at all, no notes. Now onto Morgan's backstory. They originally lived with their parents, but when they showed no signs of inheriting the powers of their sorcerer family, they were abandoned and taken in by relatives they never met before. Morgan originally became a witch to spite their parents and to stain their family name as well, as witches and sorcerers don't get along at all. But eventually they fell in love with witchcraft and they ended up saving a crow that was injured after a bunch of kids threw rocks at them. After the crow healed, the crow offered to become their familiar to pass the last witch test they needed to become a fully fledged witch for. Oh, also I should mention this, as you probably noticed, I've been only using neutral pronouns for Morgan, But Morgan is both gender fluid and intersex, so you can refer to them as whatever you want, as long as it's not derogatory. Not only does Morgan have to contact the Witches' Council and inform them, side note, the witches are a bit different from the mages as they require a connection with nature to use magic. The Witches' Council is already on it, talking with the mages and the wizards to form a plan, but witches, mages, and wizards all have history with sorcerers. As it turns out, some of the sorcerer families funded the witch trials and still do. Morgan offers to contact their older brother, as he is now the head of the family, but the idea of seeing them again makes them nervous. Morgan's family is one of the only big sorcerer families here in the country, along with the other family, so their help in finding anything by buttering them up and getting inside to find other information they might need or have missed would be great. Now we have one last character to talk about. Last but not least, we have Alon, who's a character changed the most from the original design. The first three, Alon, Shen, and Morgan, all had mainly green in their color palettes, which is one of the reasons why I changed all of their color palettes. But I completely changed Alon's. I actually never made a full body drawing of him, only did a portrait drawing. For his new design, I made Alon a lot bulkier and taller. I gave Alon a lot of more square and rectangle shapes and gave the rigidness of his character. I also gave him a deep sea color palette to fit with his new theme. And when I was working on his mutant form, I decided that his use for the sorcerers would be like fixing oil rigs and any underwater structure, hence the water-themed color. But I'm not going to show you his mutant design just yet. I want to keep it a secret. Sorry, not sorry. I did make him less emo, sorry, but I kept the closed off and rigid look to him. Speaking of Alon struggles with the idea of trusting others or anyone around them, after all the propaganda he was fed growing up. But to save his friends, he gives them information on the building plans and everything he knows. When I was designing Alon's outfit, I gave him a fisherman's outfit, or a uniform. I don't know if they actually have uniforms, but it's just what I saw on Pinterest. When I was coloring his jacket, I struggled a bit with how I wanted the pattern to look. But in the end, I went with a simple pattern, nothing too complicated. I chose to add light blue to the boots because it didn't feel right with yellow, and it looked a bit too similar to Morgan's boots, so it's really the only light blue in his color palette, but I think it's fine. Here's a bit more info on Alon's backstory and how they met. While Alon was working, he was brutally punished and left to die in the sea for not fixing the problem fast enough and being sleep deprived. But he ended up being saved by Lucy and the others. And after learning what the sorcerers were doing, he wants to save and free the other mutants. The only problem is that there are thousands of them, and many cannot just slip into a normal life simply because of the fact that they don't look human anymore. It's a major conflict between the witches, mages, wizards, and sorcerers who want to have the magic still be a secret, but Alon and the others don't want to hide. They want to live a normal life, be free, and for the sorcerers and scientists involved to be punished. On top of that, Alon is one of the first people to get a new form of magic. After he and the others help save the other mutants and free them, he wants to find out who he is and who his parents are, but he is worried about what they think of him or if they even want him. Sadly, one of the things that Alon is going to have to deal with long term, other than the trauma and PTSD, is chronic pain. Working at such a young age left him with arthritis and chronic pain in general. While I didn't mean for this to happen, this story ended up being a critique about how America deals with cryobanks and sperm donations, because there's really no limit on how many times a man can donate and all the unethical things that they're doing. And some groups are even trying to do conception at ovulation when someone releases an egg, and that would create so many children, which is what this specific, I think, Christian group wants, which is just so weird. And they don't want any eggs to be destroyed from cryobanks when the couple is done and they say you can just destroy the rest of the eggs. They don't want that to happen. This story ended up kind of being a critique about it. It's not fully the same, but it's similar. Now, a few more things about the story is that when they head to Lucy's house, across from them is one of those really rich neighborhoods that's fenced off and you can't get in, and you have to call the button to get into the neighborhood. is that the sorcerer family that created all this shit lives there. So there's even more conflict. Yippee! Alrighty, that's it, everyone. All the main cast is finished. You got a huge lore dump on them. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments. I plan on working on both my background art and architecture skills this year, and scripting as well. So it'll probably come out late next year. So this is good morning or good night. Have a wonderful day, and this is your second reminder to like and subscribe. Goodbye.